Welcome to the Sleepy Stoic. Tonight, we turn our attention to one of the most intimate and transformative practices in the Stoic tradition, the evening review. This is not a modern self-help technique dressed in ancient garb, but rather a practice that has been performed for over 2,000 years, a quiet ritual that Seneca the Younger undertook each night before sleep claimed him. The evening review is a practice of honest reckoning. It is the daily settling of accounts with oneself, a moment when the day's activities, reactions, and choices are brought into the gentle light of philosophical reflection. Seneca spoke of this practice with particular care, describing how he would examine his day not with the harsh eye of a judge passing sentence, but with the patient curiosity of a teacher seeking to understand. In our time, we are surrounded by methods of tracking and measuring ourselves. We count our steps, monitor our productivity, quantify our success. But Seneca's evening ritual is something altogether different. It is not about measurement but about meaning. It is not about judgment but about learning. And crucially, it is not about carrying the weight of the day into tomorrow, but about releasing it properly, having learned what it had to teach. Consider for a moment the weight you carry from day to day. How often do our evenings become simply a collapse into distraction, our minds still churning with the unprocessed material of the hours just past? We scroll, we watch, we consume, hoping that entertainment will quiet the mind. But the mind does not quiet through distraction. It quiets through completion, through the proper ending of one chapter before the next begins. Seneca understood this deeply. In his letters to Lucilius, he describes his nightly practice with an intimacy that makes us feel we are there in his chamber, watching as he settles into bed and begins his examination. He tells us that each night, when the lamp has been removed and his wife has fallen silent, knowing his habit, he conducts a thorough examination of his entire day. This is not a hurried inventory, completed in moments. It is a genuine investigation, a searching of the day's events for wisdom. What did I do? How did I respond? Where did I allow myself to be carried away by anger, by fear, by thoughtless habit? And most importantly, what can I learn from this? The practice rests on a fundamental Stoic insight that we are always in the process of formation. Each day shapes us, either toward wisdom or away from it. Our character is not fixed but fluid, constantly being molded by our choices and reactions. The evening review is the practice by which we take an active hand in our own formation, rather than allowing ourselves to be shaped unconsciously by circumstance and habit. There is a particular wisdom in the timing of this practice. Seneca conducts his review at night, in the last moments of consciousness before sleep. This is not accidental. The evening holds a special quality, a natural boundary. The day has ended. Its events are complete. We cannot change what has happened. This finality is essential, for it prevents the review from becoming an anxious planning session about how to fix things. The events are past. They have happened. All that remains is to understand them and to learn. But why review at all? Why not simply move forward, leaving each day behind as we race toward the next? This is the modern temptation, the belief that reflection is a luxury we cannot afford, that dwelling on the past is unproductive. But Seneca would gently challenge this assumption. What is more practical than learning? What is more productive than the cultivation of wisdom? And how can we learn from experience if we never take the time to understand what our experience is teaching? The evening review is not rumination. This distinction is crucial. Rumination is the anxious circling of thoughts, the repetitive replay of events accompanied by worry, regret, or resentment. It is thinking that goes nowhere, that produces no insight, that leaves us more agitated than when we began. The evening review, by contrast, is directional. It moves toward understanding. It seeks specific lessons. And most importantly, it concludes. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end, after which the day is released. Seneca describes his process with remarkable specificity. He examines his whole day, asking himself certain questions. What bad habit did I cure today? What vice did I resist? In what respect am I better? These questions reveal the constructive nature of the practice. He is not simply cataloging failures. He is looking for progress, however small. He is searching for evidence of growth, for moments when he acted in accordance with his principles rather than against them. But he does not shy away from his mistakes. When he finds that he spoke too harshly in an argument, when he realizes that he was impatient with a friend, when he sees that he allowed himself to become upset over something trivial, he examines these moments carefully. Not to punish himself, but to understand. What was I thinking in that moment? What assumption was I making? What was I expecting that led to my frustration? This is where the practice becomes truly philosophical. Seneca is investigating the roots of his reactions. He understands that our emotional disturbances do not arise from events themselves, but from our judgments about events. This is a core Stoic teaching, found equally in the writings of Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius. Events are neutral. It is our interpretation that gives them their emotional charge. When Seneca reviews a moment of anger, therefore, he is not simply noting that he became angry. He is examining the judgment that produced the anger. Perhaps he expected someone to behave in a particular way, and they did not. The anger arose from the gap between expectation and reality. Now, in the quiet of evening, he can see this clearly. He can recognize that his expectation was perhaps unreasonable, or that his investment in a particular outcome was too great, or that he was treating an external event as though it were entirely within his control. This investigation is not harsh. Seneca describes himself as both pleader and judge in his own court, but his judgments are tempered with understanding. He knows that he is human, that perfection is not the goal. The goal is progress, the gradual refinement of character through repeated practice and honest reflection. There is something deeply compassionate about this approach. We live in an age of harsh self-judgment, where we are encouraged to be our own worst critics, to hold ourselves to impossible standards and then berate ourselves for falling short. The evening review offers a different path. It says, yes, look honestly at your failures. Do not pretend they did not happen, but look at them with curiosity rather than condemnation. Look at them as a teacher would look at a student's mistake, seeing in it an opportunity for instruction. This distinction between learning and ruminating cannot be emphasized enough. Rumination keeps us trapped in the past, reliving painful moments without gaining insight from them. Learning uses the past as material for growth, extracting wisdom and then releasing the event itself. When Seneca finishes his evening review, he sleeps peacefully. The day has been processed. Its lessons have been noted. There is nothing left to carry into tomorrow except the wisdom gained. Consider what this practice might offer you. In the midst of busy lives, pulled in countless directions, rarely pausing to reflect on where we are going or who we are becoming, the evening review creates a space of intentionality. It says, this day mattered. My actions mattered. I will not let them pass unexamined. I will learn from them. I will use them to become wiser. But the practice requires a certain kind of honesty. Not the brutal honesty of self-flagellation, but the clear honesty of genuine inquiry. This means being willing to see ourselves as we actually are, not as we wish to be or fear we are. It means dropping our defenses long enough to ask, did I act in accordance with my values today? And if not, why not? What was happening in that moment? What was I afraid of? What was I trying to protect? These questions are not rhetorical. They require genuine answers, and those answers often reveal patterns we did not know were there. Perhaps we discover that we become defensive whenever a particular topic arises, or that we consistently sacrifice our peace of mind to please others, or that we avoid necessary conversations out of a fear we have not fully acknowledged. These patterns, once seen clearly, can be addressed, but they cannot be addressed if they remain invisible, buried beneath the rush of days. Seneca's evening review is also a practice of gratitude, though he does not frame it in those terms. When he asks himself, "In what respect am I better?" he is searching for progress, however small. This is an act of acknowledgement, a recognition that growth is happening, that effort is bearing fruit. We are often so focused on what we have not yet achieved that we fail to notice what we have already learned. The evening review corrects this imbalance, says, yes, there is much still to do, but look also at what has been done. Look at the moment today when you paused before speaking in anger. That pause is new. That is growth. This recognition matters because the philosophical life is long. It is not achieved in a day or a week or a year. It is the work of a lifetime, a gradual transformation that occurs through thousands of small choices and adjustments. Without the evening review, we might make these small improvements without ever noticing them, and thus lose the encouragement that comes from seeing our own progress. The practice also serves another crucial function. It keeps our principles alive and active. It is easy to agree with Stoic philosophy in the abstract. Yes, we should not be disturbed by things outside our control. Yes, we should treat others with patience and goodwill. Yes, we should be guided by reason rather than impulse. But these principles remain mere abstractions until they are tested in actual situations and then reflected upon afterward. The evening review brings our principles into contact with our lived experience. It asks, did I actually live according to these principles today? And when I did not, what prevented me? This is how abstract philosophy becomes personal wisdom. Not through reading alone, not through intellectual agreement alone, but through the repeated practice of bringing philosophical principles to bear on actual life, examining the results and adjusting accordingly. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his Meditations, repeatedly returns to basic Stoic principles, reminding himself of truths he has known for years. First, this can seem strange. Why does the emperor need to remind himself of ideas he clearly understands? The answer is that intellectual understanding is not the same as embodied wisdom. We need repeated engagement with philosophical truths, not because we have forgotten them, but because we have not yet fully integrated them into our automatic responses and reactions. The evening review is one of the primary mechanisms by which this integration occurs. Each night, we examine our reactions and compare them to our principles. Over time, through this repeated comparison, the gap between principle and practice narrows. We begin to respond to situations in new ways, not through forced effort, but through genuine transformation. The principles we have been reviewing gradually become part of who we are. This transformation is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. We do not suddenly awaken one day to find ourselves wise. Rather, it happens subtly over time, often without our noticing. And then one day, we find ourselves in a situation that once would have provoked anxiety or anger, and we notice that we are calm. not because we are suppressing emotion, but because we genuinely see the situation differently. The philosophical principle we have been practicing has become our natural way of perceiving. But this transformation requires consistency. The evening review must be a daily practice, not an occasional exercise. Seneca was clear about this. Every night, without exception, he conducted his examination. This regularity is what gives the practice its power. It is the steady accumulation of small insights and adjustments that produces lasting change. Many people resist daily practices, seeing them as rigid or confining. They prefer spontaneity, flexibility, the freedom to do what feels right in the moment. But there is a deeper freedom that comes from discipline, from practices that we return to regardless of how we feel. These practices become anchors, stable points in a shifting world. They are there when we need them, not because we have to do them, but because we have chosen them as part of how we want to live. The evening review is such an anchor. At the end of a difficult day, when we are tired and discouraged, the practice is there, offering a structured way to process what has happened. At the end of a good day, when things went well, the practice is there, helping us understand why things went well so that we might repeat those conditions. The practice adapts to whatever the day has brought, serving always as a means of learning and release. Seneca writes that after his examination, after he has questioned himself and understood his day, he sleeps peacefully. This detail is easy to overlook, but it is essential. The evening review is not meant to leave us agitated or ashamed. It is meant to bring peace. How does it accomplish this? By providing completion. The day is finished not just temporally but psychologically. It has been reviewed, understood, and released. There is nothing left hanging, nothing unprocessed to disturb our rest. This is perhaps the most practical benefit of the evening review, though it arises from the deepest philosophical ground. We sleep better when we have properly ended the day, not by pretending its difficulties did not exist, but by facing them, learning from them, and then letting them go. This release is not avoidance. It is the natural result of completion. When something is truly finished, it no longer demands our attention. Think of the nights you have lain awake, your mind circling through the events of the day, trying to solve problems that have already happened or preparing speeches for conversations that are already over. This is the mind's attempt to find completion, to process what remains unprocessed. But without a structured practice, this processing becomes rumination, going in circles rather than moving forward. The evening review provides structure, says, now is the time to reflect. Now is the time to examine what happened and to learn from it. And crucially, now is the time to finish with it. When the review is complete, when the lessons have been noted and the day has been released, the mind is free to rest. There is a trust in this practice, a trust that the daily work of reflection is sufficient, that we do not need to carry everything with us all the time. As we begin this longer exploration of the evening review, we are not simply learning a technique. We are entering into a practice that has been refined over centuries, a practice that shaped some of the wisest individuals in human history. Seneca used this practice. Marcus Aurelius, in his own way, engaged in similar reflection. Epictetus taught his students to examine themselves daily, to mark their progress and identify their remaining weaknesses. These philosophers were not engaged in idle speculation. They were concerned with the most practical question imaginable. How should we live? And they concluded that we should live with awareness, with intentionality, with a commitment to daily growth. The evening review is the expression of this commitment. It is the time each day when we step back from the current of activity and ask, who am I becoming through the way I am living? This question is not meant to provoke anxiety. It is meant to invite honest reflection. We are always becoming something through the way we live. Our character is always being formed, shaped by our repeated actions and reactions. The question is simply whether this formation is happening consciously or unconsciously, whether we are directing it or merely being carried along by habit and circumstance. The evening review is the practice by which we take conscious direction of our own formation, becoming active participants in who we are becoming. The evening review, as Seneca practiced it, begins with a simple premise that is easy to overlook in our complexity-seeking age. It is not the grand inventory of a soul laid bare before divine judgment. It is not the harsh accounting of every misstep recorded for eternal punishment. It is something quieter, more intimate, and ultimately more useful. It is the practice of asking oneself, before sleep arrives, what the day has taught. Seneca describes this practice in his essay on anger, where he reveals how he conducts this examination each night. When the lamp is removed and his wife has fallen silent, he inspects the whole of his day, measuring his deeds and words. He hides nothing from himself, and he passes over nothing. For why, he asks, should he fear anything from his errors when he can say, "See that you do not do this again, and for now I pardon you"? This is the foundation upon which the entire practice rests. The evening review is not designed to torment us with our inadequacies. It is designed to educate us through them. The difference between these two approaches is not merely semantic. It is the difference between a practice that builds wisdom over time and one that builds only anxiety and self-recrimination. When we approach the day's events with the intention to learn, we create a fundamentally different relationship with our mistakes. We do not deny them. We do not minimize them. We do not rationalize them away with clever justifications. But neither do we magnify them into catastrophic failures that define our character. We see them as data points in the ongoing education of a human being trying to live with virtue. The Stoics understood something about human psychology that modern research has only recently confirmed. The practice of reflection, when done properly, strengthens our capacity for self-regulation. But when done harshly, it weakens it. The critical voice that berates us for every failure does not make us better. It makes us defensive, reactive, and ultimately less capable of change. This is why Seneca's tone in describing his evening practice is so instructive. He is honest but not harsh. He is thorough but not obsessive. He examines the day with the same careful attention a craftsman might give to a completed work, looking for places where the technique might improve, where the execution fell short of the intention, where tomorrow's effort might be more aligned with excellence. Consider the specific language he uses. He says he inspects his day, measuring his deeds and words. There is precision here, but also a quality of gentle attention. To measure something is not to condemn it. It is to understand its dimensions, to see it clearly, to place it in proper relation to our aims and principles. The distinction between learning and ruminating deserves our careful attention. For here is where many well-intentioned people lose their way with evening reflection. Rumination is what happens when we replay the same scene over and over, worrying at it like a tongue worrying at a sore tooth. We revisit the conversation where we said the wrong thing, the meeting where we failed to speak up, the moment where our patience broke and we snapped at someone we love. But in rumination, we are not actually examining these moments. We are simply re-experiencing them, often with layers of additional judgment and catastrophizing added with each repetition. We imagine what others must think of us now. We construct narratives about our fundamental inadequacy. We predict future failures based on past mistakes. This is not reflection. This is suffering without purpose. Learning, by contrast, moves through the experience toward understanding. We look at what happened, yes, but we do not stop there. We ask what conditions led to this action. We consider what we were thinking and feeling in that moment. We examine what we might have done differently, not to punish ourselves for not having done it, but to prepare ourselves to do it next time. Seneca models this approach in the questions he asks himself during his evening review. In what matter have I been able to resist excess? In what respect am I better? These are not questions designed to highlight failure. They are questions designed to reveal progress, however modest. And when he does identify mistakes, his response is not despair but practical resolution. See that you do not do this again, he tells himself, and for now I pardon you. That final phrase carries enormous weight. For now I pardon you, not I condemn you, not I berate you for your weakness, not I despair of your ever improving. Pardon you, and in that pardon, extended to oneself each evening, there is both accountability and mercy, both honesty and hope. This balance is the heart of constructive self-reflection. We must be honest enough to see ourselves clearly, including our faults and failures. But we must be merciful enough to remain in relationship with ourselves, to maintain the inner goodwill necessary for continued growth. Harsh judgment fractures this relationship, turns the self into an adversary, and no one learns well from an enemy. The neuropsychology here is fascinating. When we engage in harsh self-criticism, we activate the same neural pathways associated with external threat. Our body goes into a mild stress response. Cortisol rises. Our capacity for creative problem-solving diminishes. We become reactive rather than reflective. This is precisely the opposite of the state needed for genuine learning. But when we approach our mistakes with curiosity rather than condemnation, with the intention to understand rather than to punish, we activate different neural networks entirely. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive function and planning, remains engaged. We can think clearly about cause and effect. We can generate alternative approaches. We can consolidate the day's experiences into useful knowledge rather than painful memories to be avoided. This is what Seneca understood intuitively, what he built into the very structure of his evening practice. The review is comprehensive but compassionate. It is honest but hopeful. It acknowledges failure without being defined by it. And crucially, it occurs within a framework of continuous improvement rather than impossible perfection. When Seneca asks himself whether he has been able to resist excess, he is not assuming that he has perfectly resisted all excess at all times. He is asking where he has been able to do so, which implicitly acknowledges there were also moments when he was not able. But rather than dwelling on those moments as evidence of his fundamental inadequacy, he treats them as opportunities for understanding and future adjustment. This is the practical wisdom of the Stoic approach. We are not trying to become perfect beings who never make mistakes. We are trying to become progressively wiser, more virtuous, more aligned with our highest values over time. This is a project that unfolds across years and decades, not one that is completed or failed each day. The evening review serves this longer project by creating a daily practice of learning from experience. Each day becomes a small chapter in the larger story of our development. Some chapters will show more progress than others. Some will reveal setbacks or challenges we had not anticipated. But all of them, when examined with the right spirit, contribute to the education of our character. consider what this means for how we structure the review itself. We do not begin by asking what we did wrong. We do not start from a posture of assumed failure. Instead, we might begin where Seneca begins, by asking what the day has taught us. This is a fundamentally different orientation. It assumes the day had value, that it offered opportunities for learning, that we are capable of extracting wisdom from our experiences. From this foundation, we can then look more specifically at different aspects of the day. Where did we face challenges? How did we respond to them? Were our responses aligned with our values and principles? If not, what got in the way? What were we thinking or feeling that led us away from our better judgment? What might we do differently when similar situations arise in the future? These questions create a progression from observation to understanding to practical resolution. We see what happened. We understand why it happened. We consider how we might respond more skillfully next time. This is the movement of genuine learning, and it is also the movement that allows us to release the day properly when the review is complete. This release is perhaps the least understood aspect of the evening review, yet it is essential to the practice. The review is not meant to be carried into sleep like a burden. It is meant to be completed, resolved, and set aside. We have looked at the day. We have learned what it had to teach us. We have made our resolutions for the future. And now we let it go. Seneca's phrase, "For now I pardon you," signals this release. He has examined his actions, identified where improvement is needed, and committed to doing better. But he does not lie awake torturing himself with his failures. He pardons himself, and in that pardon, he finds peace enough for rest. Tomorrow will bring new opportunities to practice what he has learned tonight. But tonight, the work is done. This capacity to release the day is partly about sleep hygiene, yes, but it is also about something deeper. It is about trust in the process of gradual improvement. It is about faith that we do not need to fix everything tonight, that tomorrow will come with its own chances for virtue, that we are works in progress, and this is exactly as it should be. Many people struggle with this release precisely because they have not done the review properly. They have either avoided looking at difficult parts of the day, leaving them to surface as anxiety as they try to sleep, or they have looked at them too harshly, creating a spiral of negative emotion that prevents rest. The Stoic approach offers a middle path. Look clearly but kindly. Learn what can be learned. Resolve to do better. And then let it go. There is a rhythm to this that becomes natural with practice. The review itself might take 15 minutes, perhaps 20. Long enough to give the day proper attention, not so long that it becomes an ordeal. We move through the hours in our mind, not dwelling on any particular moment, but noting what stands out as significant. Where did we face tests of our character? How did we respond? What do we want to remember from this day? These questions serve multiple purposes. They help us learn from experience, yes, but they also help us recognize our own capacity for virtue. Often in the rush of daily life, we fail to notice our small victories. We respond patiently to a frustration and immediately move on to the next task without registering that we have just practiced an important virtue. The evening review gives us a chance to see these moments. In what respect am I better? Seneca asks himself. Perhaps today we were more patient with a colleague than we would have been a month ago. Perhaps we caught ourselves beginning to gossip and chose silence instead. Perhaps we felt fear but did not let it prevent us from acting according to our values. These are not dramatic victories, but they are real ones, and they deserve to be acknowledged. This acknowledgement is not about pride or self-congratulation. It is about recognizing that the path of virtue is being walked, however slowly, however imperfectly. It is about building confidence in our capacity for growth. And it is about training our attention to notice not only our failures but also our successes, not only where we fell short but also where we rose to the occasion. The Stoics understood that attention is trainable. What we habitually notice shapes how we experience our lives. If we train ourselves to notice only failures and inadequacies, we will experience ourselves as failing and inadequate. But if we train ourselves to notice both successes and failures, both progress and setbacks, we develop a more balanced and accurate view of our development. This balanced view is essential for maintaining motivation over the long term. No one continues working toward virtue if they believe they are making no progress. The evening review, when done properly, allows us to see our progress even as it reveals areas for continued growth. We are getting better, and we are not yet where we want to be. Both of these things are true, and both deserve our attention. Consider how different this is from the way many people approach self-improvement. There is often either harsh criticism that sees only failures, or there is defensive avoidance that refuses to look at failures at all. The Stoic approach rejects both extremes. We look at everything, the good and the bad, the successful and the unsuccessful, with the same quality of honest, educational attention. This requires practice, and at first it may feel unfamiliar or even uncomfortable. We are so accustomed to either beating ourselves up or making excuses that this middle path of honest assessment without harsh judgment can feel strange. But with repetition, it becomes natural. It becomes the way we relate to ourselves, not just in the evening review but throughout the day. And as it becomes natural, something interesting happens. We find ourselves becoming less reactive during the day itself. Because we know we will have time in the evening to reflect on what happened, we do not need to immediately process every difficulty as it occurs. We can respond to challenges with more equanimity, knowing that later we will have space to understand them more fully. This is one of the less obvious benefits of the evening review. It creates a container for processing experience, which paradoxically allows us to be more present during experience itself. We do not need to analyze everything as it happens. We do not need to immediately judge whether we handled something well or poorly. We can simply respond as best we can in the moment, knowing that the evening will bring time for reflection and learning. Marcus Aurelius touches on this in his Meditations when he reminds himself that the present moment is all we truly possess. The past is gone, the future has not yet arrived. But this does not mean we ignore the past or fail to prepare for the future. It means we give each its proper place. During the day, we focus on responding well to what is actually happening. In the evening, we reflect on what has happened and prepare ourselves to respond better tomorrow. This temporal division serves us well. It prevents us from being lost in anxious rumination during the day while ensuring we still learn from our experiences. It honors both the need for present moment engagement and the need for reflective learning. Both are necessary for a well-lived life, and the evening review provides the structure that allows both to flourish. The specific template Seneca offers is beautifully simple. When the lamp is removed and quiet descends, he reviews the day in sequence. What did he say? What did he do? What did he fail to do that he intended? How did he respond to challenges? Where did he fall into excess? Where did he exercise restraint? In what way did he improve? These questions can be adapted to our own circumstances and concerns, but their basic structure remains useful. We look at speech, action, and omission. We consider our responses to difficulty. We identify both progress and setbacks. We do not spend equal time on everything, but we give the whole day at least a brief inspection. Some moments will stand out as requiring more attention. Perhaps we lost our temper in a way that now, in the calm of evening, we can see was disproportionate to the situation. We do not simply note this and move on. We examine it more closely. What was happening just before we lost our temper? Were we already frustrated about something else? Were we hungry or tired? Had someone touched on a particular sensitivity? This examination is not about making excuses. It is about understanding the causal chains that lead to our actions. The Stoics believed that all actions arise from beliefs and judgments, though not always conscious ones. If we can understand what beliefs led to an action we now recognize as unvirtuous, we can work to correct those beliefs and thus change future actions. Perhaps we lost our temper because we were judging something as terrible that was merely inconvenient. Perhaps we were treating an external outcome as though it were entirely within our control, and when it did not go as we wished, we reacted with disproportionate frustration. These are errors in judgment, and once we see them clearly, we can begin to correct them. This is the heart of Stoic self-improvement. We do not try to suppress our emotions or force ourselves to behave differently through sheer willpower. Instead, we work to correct the judgments that give rise to destructive emotions and behaviors. We train ourselves to see things more accurately, to distinguish what is truly good from what merely seems pleasant, what is truly bad from what merely seems difficult. The evening review is where this training happens most explicitly. During the day, events unfold too quickly for this kind of careful analysis. But in the evening, we can slow down and examine our automatic responses. We can ask whether our judgments were sound. We can consider whether our emotions were proportionate. We can identify where we need to do more philosophical work to bring our beliefs into better alignment with reality. This is demanding work, but it is also deeply hopeful work. It assumes that we can change, that we can learn, that we can become wiser and more virtuous over time. It assumes that mistakes are not permanent stains but temporary teachers. It assumes that we are capable of the kind of honest self-examination that leads to genuine growth rather than merely defensive self-protection. And crucially, it assumes that this work need not be grim or painful. Seneca does not describe his evening review as a torment. He describes it as a daily accounting, a natural part of his routine, something done with seriousness but also with self-compassion. He examines himself as a judge might examine evidence, with care and thoroughness, but he also pardons himself as one might pardon a friend who is sincerely trying to improve. This combination of rigor and compassion, of honesty and mercy, is what makes the practice sustainable over a lifetime. If it were only rigorous and honest, it would become too painful to continue. If it were only compassionate and merciful, it would lose its power to drive real change. But together, these qualities create a practice that is both effective and humane, both challenging and supportive. As we move deeper into understanding this practice, we begin to see how it serves not just as a technique for self-improvement but as a foundational practice for the philosophical life itself. It trains us in the art of honest self-knowledge, which is the beginning of wisdom. We return now to the quiet architecture of evening reflection, to the practice Seneca refined through years of disciplined attention. What emerges from his letters and essays is not a technique imposed from without, but rather a natural rhythm discovered through patient observation of his own mind. He did not invent self-examination. The practice was already ancient when he adopted it. But he brought to it something distinctively his own, a quality we might call philosophical gentleness. This gentleness is crucial to understand. It does not mean softness or evasion. It means approaching the day's events with the calm precision of someone examining a detailed map rather than the harsh judgment of someone delivering a verdict. Seneca was not standing before himself as prosecutor and defendant. He was sitting beside himself as teacher and student. The distinction matters profoundly. When we examine our day with the energy of prosecution, we bring to the task all the adversarial intensity of a trial. We search for guilt, for evidence of failure, for confirmation of our worst suspicions about ourselves. This kind of examination exhausts rather than enlightens. It generates heat without light. We end such sessions not wiser but merely more depleted, carrying forward not insight but a vague sense of inadequacy. Seneca's approach moved in a different direction entirely. He brought to his evening review the curiosity of someone genuinely interested in understanding how events unfolded as they did. When he noticed that he had spoken harshly to a friend, his question was not primarily, "How could I have done such a thing?" but rather, what sequence of thoughts and circumstances led to that moment? This shift in questioning changes everything. The prosecutorial question seeks to establish blame. The philosophical question seeks to understand causation. One closes down inquiry with judgment. The other opens up inquiry with genuine interest. Seneca understood that we cannot learn from experiences we are busy condemning. We can only learn from experiences we are willing to examine with calm attention. This does not mean excusing poor behavior. Seneca was clear-eyed about his own failings, but he recognized that understanding how we come to act as we do is the necessary foundation for acting differently in the future. If I simply condemn myself for impatience without understanding what triggers my impatience, I remain at the mercy of those triggers. If I examine the pattern of events and thoughts that precede my impatience, I begin to see where intervention might be possible. Consider a specific example from daily life. You find yourself in the evening reviewing a moment from the afternoon when you responded with irritation to a colleague's reasonable question. The prosecutorial approach, "I should be better than this. I'm such a difficult person. I always do this. I'll never learn." Notice how this internal monologue generates shame and resolution in equal measure, neither of which is particularly useful. The shame feels bad but changes nothing. The resolution feels momentarily good but lacks any specific direction. The Senecan approach looks different. I was already feeling pressed for time when the question came. I had been trying to solve a problem that was proving elusive. The question felt like an interruption to my concentration rather than a legitimate request for help. My irritation arose from these conditions meeting a question I would normally handle with patience. This examination does not excuse the irritation, but it does something more valuable than condemnation. It reveals the mechanism. When we understand mechanism, we gain the possibility of intervention. Seneca could now ask himself, what might I do differently when I feel pressed for time and someone makes a request? The answer need not be complicated. Perhaps a simple acknowledgement. I notice I'm feeling pressured right now, but your question is important. Give me a moment to shift my attention. This small recognition can interrupt the automatic cascade from pressure to irritation to regrettable response. This is what Seneca meant by his evening practice building wisdom through daily repetition. Each night's examination added a small increment of understanding about how his mind worked under various conditions. Over time, these increments accumulated into genuine self-knowledge. He came to recognize his own patterns, his vulnerabilities, the specific circumstances that tended to pull him away from his philosophical principles. We might think of this accumulation as similar to how a scientist gradually maps an ecosystem. At first, the observations seem isolated and random, but with patient, repeated attention, patterns emerge. Certain conditions reliably produce certain results. The scientist does not condemn the ecosystem for behaving as it does. The scientist simply notes the relationships and begins to understand the underlying dynamics. Seneca brought this same patient, observational quality to the ecosystem of his own mind. The question naturally arises: how detailed should such examination be? Seneca himself varied in his approach depending on what the day had brought. Some evenings, his review focused on a single significant interaction. Other evenings, he moved more quickly through multiple smaller moments. The key was not exhaustive cataloging, but rather honest attention to whatever seemed most significant. This requires a certain trust in your own judgment about what matters. Not everything that happened during the day deserves extended examination. Much of daily life unfolds exactly as it should, requiring no special attention. The evening review is not meant to be a suspicious interrogation of every moment, as if each hour might be concealing some moral failing. Rather, it is a considered reflection on moments that contain some tension, some difficulty, some opportunity for learning. How do we recognize such moments? Often, they announce themselves through a residual feeling. Something still bothers us as evening arrives. A conversation that ended awkwardly. A decision we made hastily. A response we wish we could take back. These lingering concerns are natural candidates for examination. But so too are moments that went surprisingly well, times when we managed a difficult situation with more wisdom than we expected of ourselves. Seneca understood that we learn as much from examining our successes as our failures. When he noticed that he had handled a provocative comment with equanimity, he did not simply congratulate himself and move on. He examined that moment as carefully as he would examine a failure. What made it possible to remain calm? What thoughts arose? What helped him maintain perspective? By understanding the conditions of his successes, he learned how to reproduce them more reliably. This brings us to a subtle but important aspect of Seneca's evening practice. The review was not primarily backward-looking. Yes, it examined what had already happened, but it did so in service of the future. The question was never merely, "What did I do?" but always, "What does this teach me about how to live tomorrow?" This future orientation transforms reflection from rumination into preparation. Rumination circles endlessly around what has already occurred, rehashing events without purpose, generating distress without insight. It is the mental equivalent of pacing without destination. We feel busy, our thoughts certainly seem active, but we arrive nowhere new. We simply wear a groove deeper into familiar territory. Seneca's examination, by contrast, always moved toward something. Each observation about today became a resource for tomorrow. If he noticed that he had allowed someone's rudeness to disturb his peace, the question became, how might I recognize such moments earlier and maintain equanimity? If he noticed that he had spoken without adequate thought, the question became, what practice might help me create space between impulse and speech? This forward movement is what gives the evening review its constructive character. We are not dwelling in the past. We are mining the past for wisdom we can carry forward. The day that has ended becomes a teacher offering lessons for the days still to come. This relationship to time, seeing the past as instructor rather than judge, prevents the practice from becoming morbid or obsessive. It also explains why Seneca could approach his review with something approaching cheerfulness. He was not submitting himself to a nightly punishment. He was engaged in a nightly education. Even the day's failures became valuable once he extracted their lessons. A Stoic philosopher cannot learn courage without encountering fear, cannot learn patience without experiencing provocation, cannot learn wisdom without making mistakes. The day's difficulties, properly examined, reveal themselves as the very circumstances through which virtue develops. Consider how different this is from our common relationship to mistakes. We tend to regard errors as evidence of inadequacy, as embarrassments to be minimized and forgotten as quickly as possible. This attitude deprives us of their educational value. Seneca saw mistakes as expensive tuition for wisdom. Having paid the price through the discomfort of the error itself, why not claim the education it offers? When he examined a day that contained a significant mistake, he would consider several questions. First, what did I misunderstand about the situation? Often errors arise from incomplete information or mistaken assumptions. Identifying the gap in understanding prevents its repetition. Second, what desire or aversion drove me? Many mistakes trace back to wanting something too intensely or avoiding something too desperately. Recognizing these attachments reveals where his philosophical practice needed strengthening. Third, what would wisdom have done differently? Not in the sense of fantasy revision, but as a genuine inquiry into what principles might have guided a better response. These questions work together to transform experience into education. The first question addressed understanding. The second addressed character. The third addressed principle. Together, they created a complete picture of how growth might occur. Seneca was not content with vague resolutions to do better. He wanted specific understanding of what better would look like and what in himself needed to change to make it possible. This specificity is crucial for anyone taking up the evening review practice. Vague self-criticism produces vague anxiety without clear direction for improvement. Specific examination produces specific understanding and specific next steps. The difference is between telling yourself, I need to be more patient and understanding, when I'm hungry and someone interrupts my concentration, I become irritable. I might address this by not scheduling difficult conversations before meals, or by recognizing that hunger irritation as a physical state rather than an accurate reading of the situation. The second insight is far more useful than the first. It gives you something concrete to work with. Seneca cultivated this concreteness throughout his practice. He did not traffic in grand abstractions about being a better person. He worked with the actual material of daily life. This conversation, that decision, this moment of choice. Philosophy became practical through this attention to the specific and particular. Yet even as he focused on specific moments, Seneca never lost sight of larger patterns. This is where the daily practice of review becomes something more than isolated examinations. Over time, the nightly observations begin to reveal recurring themes. You notice that certain situations consistently challenge you. Certain people reliably trigger specific reactions. Certain times of day find you more or less able to maintain your principles. These patterns are extraordinarily valuable information. They map the actual terrain of your character, not the idealized version you might prefer to imagine, but the real landscape of tendencies and vulnerabilities. With this map, you can move through life more skillfully. You know which territories require extra vigilance, which crossroads tend to pull you in unhelpful directions, which paths lead reliably toward wisdom. Seneca speaks in his letters of gradually coming to know himself through this practice. Not in the sense of discovering some hidden essence, but in the sense of understanding how he actually functioned under various conditions. This was knowledge hard-won through hundreds of evening examinations, each contributing a small piece to the larger picture. No single night's review revealed complete self-understanding, but the accumulated practice of years created genuine wisdom about his own nature. We might imagine him, Then, settling into his examination not with dread but with the quiet interest of someone pursuing worthwhile understanding. The day had been complex, as days are. It had contained moments of wisdom and moments of foolishness, times when philosophy guided him and times when he forgot his principles entirely. All of this was simply the raw material for learning. He would begin, as was his practice, by simply recalling the day's arc. Not yet examining or judging, just remembering. The morning's activities, the encounters of midday, the challenges of afternoon, the conversations of evening. This simple recollection served as foundation. You cannot examine what you do not remember. And in the act of remembering without immediate judgment, some of the day's emotional charge begins to settle. This settling is important. Events that seemed catastrophic a few hours ago often reveal themselves as manageable when viewed from the calmer perspective of evening. The argument that felt relationship ending at lunch might appear, by dinner, as a momentary conflict admitting of repair. This is not to dismiss genuine difficulties, but simply to recognize that our immediate emotional responses often distort our sense of proportion. The evening review allows events to arrive at their proper size. As Seneca moved from simple recollection to actual examination, he would notice which moments drew his attention. Where did his mind naturally pause? What wanted further consideration? These spontaneous points of focus often proved more valuable than any predetermined agenda. His own wisdom, we might say, was already beginning to sort what mattered from what did not. Suppose his attention settled on a conversation that had gone badly. Rather than immediately judging himself for the failure, he would reconstruct the conversation with care. What exactly was said? What did the other person seem to want or need? What was he himself thinking and feeling during the exchange? This careful reconstruction often revealed nuances invisible during the conversation itself. In the heat of the moment, we react. In the cool of examination, we can understand. He might notice, for instance, that the conversation began to deteriorate at a specific point. Perhaps when the other person questioned a decision he had made. Something in him had contracted against the questioning, heard it as attack rather than inquiry. His response came from that contracted, defensive place rather than from philosophical principle. Now, in evening review, he could see the mechanism clearly. The questioning triggered a familiar vulnerability about being wrong or appearing foolish. That vulnerability generated defensiveness. The defensiveness produced a response that escalated rather than resolved the conflict. This chain of causation is exactly what evening examination exists to reveal. Seneca was not interested in condemning himself for defensiveness. He was interested in understanding what triggered it and what might interrupt the automatic progression from trigger to unhelpful response. Perhaps tomorrow, when questioned, he might notice the contraction before responding, might take a breath, might remember that being questioned is not the same as being attacked, might choose curiosity about the other person's perspective rather than defense of his own. This is practical wisdom being built in real time, not through abstract contemplation of virtue, but through patient examination of how virtue succeeds and fails in actual moments of actual days. Seneca understood that we become wise not by reading philosophy but by practicing it in the laboratory of daily life and then examining our experiments each evening. As his examination continued, he might move to a different kind of moment. Perhaps a decision made under pressure about how to allocate his time. Someone had requested his help with a matter he found tedious. He had wanted to refuse but felt obligated to accept. Now, hours later, he felt resentful both of the task and of himself for accepting it. This resentment was worth examining. The Stoic framework offered him tools for such examination. Was helping this person truly obligatory, or had he simply failed to decline with clarity and grace? If it was genuinely part of his responsibilities, why resist what was necessary? If it was not necessary, why agree to what he did not want to do? These questions cut through the fog of resentment to reveal actual choices and their consequences. He might recognize that he had agreed out of a desire to be seen as helpful rather than from genuine willingness to help. This is a subtle but important distinction. Acting from desire for reputation differs from acting from virtue. The first generates resentment because we are performing rather than choosing freely. The second, even when difficult, maintains inner freedom because we act from our own principles rather than others' expectations. This recognition would not necessarily mean refusing such requests in the future. It might mean learning to distinguish between help freely given and performance motivated by reputation, or learning to decline gracefully when a request falls outside his actual obligations, or learning to accept tasks he deems necessary without the added burden of resentment. Any of these would represent growth in wisdom. The evening review thus becomes a space where we can distinguish between unavoidable external demands and unnecessary internal resistances. Much of what we experience as burden is actually our own resistance to what is. Seneca was clear-eyed about this. The task itself may require 2 hours. Our resentment about the task can poison 20 hours. The examination helps us see where we are creating our own suffering through resistance to reality. This does not mean passive acceptance of everything. Stoicism is often misunderstood on this point. Seneca was not suggesting we simply endure all circumstances without effort to improve them. Rather, he was distinguishing between productive action to change what can be changed and unproductive resistance to what cannot. If the task is truly necessary and cannot be delegated or deferred, resentment serves no purpose. Better to do it with grace, maintaining our inner freedom regardless of external constraints. But if the task was not truly necessary, if we agreed from weakness or confusion rather than clear judgment, then the lesson is different. We learn about our own tendencies toward people-pleasing or unclear boundaries. We consider how to decline more skillfully next time. We strengthen our capacity to live according to our own reasoned judgments rather than automatic compliance with others' requests. These distinctions emerge not from harsh self-criticism but from honest, patient examination. Seneca was teaching himself night by night to see clearly, to understand the difference between what he could control and what he could not, to recognize his own patterns of thinking and reacting, to identify where philosophy might enter and change habitual patterns into conscious choices. As the examination naturally drew toward completion, Seneca would arrive at a crucial moment: the release. Having examined the day honestly, having extracted its lessons, having noted where growth might occur, he would then let the day go. This release is as important as the examination itself. We examine in order to learn, and we release in order to be free of what has passed. Without this release, evening review becomes merely organized rumination. We turn events over endlessly without purpose, carrying them forward into the night and the next day. Seneca understood that the past, once it has taught us what it can, deserves to be set down. Not forgotten, but released from the grip of anxious repetition. The day has ended. Its events are complete. What remains is only what we have learned and what we carry forward. This release is not dismissal or denial. It is completion. The day has been given its due attention. Its lessons have been noted. Nothing is served by continuing to rehearse what has already been thoroughly examined. In fact, such rehearsal prevents rest and prevents tomorrow from arriving fresh. Seneca was practicing what we might call closure, bringing the day to its natural end rather than dragging it indefinitely into the future. He might conclude his examination with a simple acknowledgement. The day contained both wisdom and folly, as days do. He acted well in certain moments and poorly in others. He learned specific things about himself and about how to live. Tomorrow offers new opportunities to practice what he has learned. The day is complete. He can rest. This completion creates genuine peace. Not the false peace of avoiding examination, but the real peace of having examined honestly and then released what has passed. Many of us carry days, weeks, even years forward because we have never properly completed them. We have never given them the attention they deserved, extracted their lessons, and then allowed them to end. They remain perpetually unfinished, demanding our continued attention. The evening review offers a different relationship to time. Each day receives its examination and then reaches completion. We do not pretend the day was perfect. We do not ignore its difficulties, but we also do not keep it alive through endless review. We honor it through attention and then release it through completion. This allows tomorrow to arrive as genuinely new rather than burdened with yesterday's unfinished business. Seneca would rise from his examination not heavy with self-condemnation but light with self-understanding. He knew himself better than he had that morning. He had specific insights to carry forward. The day's errors had been transformed into tomorrow's wisdom, and the day itself could now end, having served its purpose as teacher. This is the art of evening review: honest examination, patient learning, and complete release. Through this practice, repeated nightly, Seneca built a life of increasing wisdom and decreasing regret. Not because he made fewer mistakes, but because he learned from each one and then let it go. We have spent considerable time exploring the philosophical foundations and deeper dimensions of Seneca's evening review. We have examined how this practice differs from rumination, how it builds wisdom across time, and how it transforms our relationship with memory and experience itself. Now we turn toward the practical application of this ancient ritual, bringing the philosophy into direct contact with the texture of our daily lives. The value of a philosophical practice lies not merely in understanding it conceptually, but in bringing it into lived reality. Seneca did not write about the evening examination as an abstract ideal. He practiced it each night after the lamps were extinguished and the household quieted. He turned his attention inward and reviewed the day that had passed. This was not occasional reflection but daily discipline, as consistent as breathing. When we approach the practical implementation of this ritual, we must resist the modern impulse to seek perfect systems or optimal routines. The evening review is not a productivity technique to be optimized. It is a philosophical practice to be inhabited. The question is not how to do it most efficiently, but how to do it most truthfully. Let us begin with the most fundamental practical question. When does the evening review occur? Seneca practiced it at the end of his day, in bed, after the activities of life had ceased. This timing is significant. The review does not happen in the midst of the day's momentum, when we are still caught in the forward motion of tasks and obligations. It happens in the pause, in the threshold space between the day that was and the sleep that comes. For Seneca, this meant the moment when he lay down to rest, when the external world released its claims upon him. The specific hour matters less than the quality of the moment. Some of us retire early, some late. The review happens when our day has truly ended, when we have stepped back from the world of action into the space of reflection. This natural boundary is important. If we attempt the review while still engaged with the day, while still responding to messages or finishing tasks, we bring the day's momentum into the practice itself. The review requires a certain stillness, a genuine pause. We must actually be done with the day before we can properly examine it. The physical setting matters as well, though not in the way we might expect. Seneca did not require a special meditation cushion or a dedicated space. He performed the review lying in bed, in the ordinary place of rest. There is wisdom in this simplicity. The evening review is not separate from life, requiring special conditions. It is woven into life, occurring in the same place we prepare for sleep each night. Some practitioners find it helpful to sit rather than lie down, particularly in the beginning, to maintain alertness during the review. This is perfectly consistent with the practice. What matters is that the body is at rest, that we are not attempting to do other things simultaneously. The review asks for our full attention, but it asks for it in a posture of rest rather than strain. The physical stillness supports the inner work. When the body settles, the mind can more easily turn its attention from the external world to the internal landscape. This is not forced meditation but natural transition. We are simply becoming present to ourselves in a different way than we were present throughout the day. Now we come to the structure of the review itself. How does one actually do this practice? What form does it take? Here we must be both precise and flexible. Seneca offers us a framework, but the practice must adapt to the individual life it serves. The review begins with a simple question: what did I do today? This is the opening inquiry, direct and unadorned. We are not yet judging or evaluating. We are simply remembering. The day passes through consciousness in review, moment by moment or scene by scene. This initial recollection need not be exhaustive. We are not creating a minute-by-minute account. We are bringing the day's significant moments back into awareness. The conversation that went poorly, the choice we made under pressure, the moment we responded with patience or with irritation, the opportunity we seized or the one we let pass. As the day's events return to consciousness, we move into the second phase of the review, honest examination. This is where Seneca's practice shows its particular character. He asks not merely what happened, but how we engaged with what happened. Where did I act according to my principles? Where did I fall short? What could I have done differently? These questions require genuine honesty, but as we have explored, this honesty is not harsh judgment. We are not prosecuting ourselves. We are examining our actions with the same careful attention we might bring to studying a craft we wish to master. The carpenter examines the joint to see if it is true. The practitioner of philosophy examines the action to see if it was wise. When we find moments where we acted well, we acknowledge them simply. There is no need for self-congratulation, but there is value in recognition. We note what worked, what was skillful, what was aligned with our principles. This becomes part of our learning. We are building a felt sense of what right action looks like in our particular life. When we find moments where we acted poorly, we approach them with the same clarity. What exactly happened? What was I trying to do? Where did I go wrong? What was I not seeing in the moment that I can see now? These questions are specific and constructive. We are gathering information, not passing sentence. Seneca emphasizes that this examination should be thorough but not endless. We are reviewing the day, not becoming lost in it. If we find ourselves circling the same moment repeatedly, caught in rumination, we have drifted from the practice. The review moves through the day systematically, attending to each significant moment, then moving on. A practical approach is to let the day unfold in natural sequence. Beginning with the morning, we follow the thread of time through to the present moment. This chronological structure provides a simple framework that prevents us from becoming lost or overwhelmed. We are not jumping randomly through memories, but following the actual path we walked. As we review each moment or event, we can ask 3 specific questions. These are the core inquiries that Seneca's practice implies. First, did I respond to this situation according to my principles, or did I act from impulse, emotion, or habit? This question addresses our intentionality and self-governance. Second, if I faced this situation again, what would I do differently? This question moves us toward practical wisdom. We are not merely noting failure, but imagining better response. This imaginative work is part of how we train ourselves for future action. Third, what does this moment teach me about myself, about others, about the nature of things? This question opens the review to genuine learning. Every moment of the day becomes potential instruction. Even our errors are teachers if we attend to them properly. These 3 questions need not be spoken aloud or answered in formal fashion. They are orientations of attention. As we bring each moment of the day into awareness, these inquiries naturally arise. Did I act well? What would I do differently? What can I learn? The review need not address every moment of the day. Some hours pass without significant events. We worked steadily, we ate a meal, we traveled from one place to another. These ordinary stretches do not require detailed examination unless something notable occurred within them. We focus our attention on the moments that matter. The decisions made, the interactions shared, the challenges faced. A common practical question concerns how long the review should take. Seneca does not specify a duration. The practice takes as long as it takes to review the day honestly and thoroughly. For most practitioners, this means somewhere between 10 and 30 minutes, though the exact time will vary with the complexity of the day and the depth of one's practice. In the beginning, the review may feel awkward or unfamiliar. We are not accustomed to this kind of systematic self-examination. The mind may resist, offering distractions or dismissals. This is natural. Any new practice requires time to become established. What matters is consistency rather than perfection. If we forget to do the review one evening, we simply return to it the next. There is no need for guilt or self-reproach. This is not a streak to maintain or a score to optimize. It is a practice to inhabit as best we can, returning to it whenever we drift away. One of the most valuable practical aspects of Seneca's evening review is its flexibility within structure. While the framework remains consistent, the specific content changes nightly, shaped by the actual events of our lives. This means the practice never becomes merely mechanical. Each evening brings new material to examine, new opportunities to learn. Some evenings, the review will focus on a single significant event. Perhaps we faced a difficult conversation, made an important decision, or encountered an unexpected challenge. These moments deserve careful attention. We might spend most of our review time examining one interaction from multiple angles, understanding what happened and why, considering how we might have responded differently. Other evenings, the day may have been more diffuse, filled with many small moments rather than one significant event. Here the review takes on a different quality. We are noticing patterns, seeing how our habitual ways of being played out across many interactions. Perhaps we notice that we rushed through conversations all day, never quite present, or that we met small frustrations with patience. These patterns are themselves worthy of examination. There will be difficult evenings when the review brings us face to face with real failure. We acted badly, hurt someone, made a choice we deeply regret. These are the nights when Seneca's emphasis on learning rather than judgment becomes most crucial. Yes, we erred. Yes, there may be harm to repair. But the review is not penance. It is the space where we understand what happened so we can act differently tomorrow. When we encounter such moments in our review, we must resist the urge to either minimize the failure or catastrophize it. Both responses prevent learning. Instead, we look directly at what occurred. We acknowledge the harm without drowning in guilt. We understand our error without excusing it. We ask, what was I not seeing? What do I need to learn? The review then naturally suggests action. If we have wronged someone, we may need to apologize or make amends. If we have fallen short of our own standards, we may need to recommit to our principles. But these actions arise from understanding rather than shame. We repair what we can because we see clearly what needs repairing, not because we are punishing ourselves. There will also be evenings of genuine satisfaction, when the review reveals that we met the day skillfully. We responded to difficulty with wisdom, treated others with kindness, acted according to our principles even when it was challenging. These evenings deserve their own kind of attention. We note what we did well, not for pride's sake, but to reinforce the patterns we wish to cultivate. This balance between acknowledging failure and recognizing success is part of the practice's wisdom. We are training ourselves to see accurately, which means seeing both where we fall short and where we succeed. A review that finds only failure becomes self-flagellation. A review that sees only success becomes self-deception. We seek the truth of how we actually lived the day. As the review concludes each evening, there is often a natural moment of resolution. Having examined the day, we release it. This release is not forgetting or dismissing. It is completion. We have attended to the day properly. We have learned what it had to teach. Now we let it become past, freeing ourselves to meet tomorrow freshly. Seneca describes this release in terms of the soul settling, finding its rest. Having reviewed the day honestly, having neither condemned ourselves harshly nor excused ourselves falsely, we can lay down the day's burden. This is how the practice serves sleep, not by being sleep hypnosis, but by completing the day's business so that sleep can come naturally. Some practitioners find it helpful to end the review with a brief acknowledgement of what they learned or what they intend to remember. This need not be formal. It might be as simple as noting, "Tomorrow I will listen more carefully before responding," or, "I see now that I am most impatient when I am hungry." These insights arise naturally from the review and gently shape our attention going forward. The question often arises whether the review should be written down. Seneca does not insist on writing, but neither does he forbid it. Some practitioners find that writing helps them stay focused during the review, prevents the mind from wandering. Others find that writing interrupts the natural flow of reflection. Both approaches are valid. If we do choose to write, the writing should be simple and functional. This is not journaling in the expansive sense. It is note-taking, a brief record of the day's key moments and the insights they yielded. A few sentences, perhaps a short paragraph. The cumulative effect of the evening review emerges slowly, over weeks and months of consistent practice. This is important to understand practically, because we may not notice dramatic changes immediately. The practice works subtly, shifting our relationship with our days and with ourselves in ways that only become apparent with time. One of the first changes many practitioners notice is an increase in awareness during the day itself. Knowing that we will review our actions in the evening makes us more conscious of those actions as they occur. This is not anxious self-monitoring but gentle presence. We begin to catch ourselves in the moment, noticing when we are about to respond from habit rather than wisdom. This daytime awareness is not the goal of the practice, but it is a natural effect. The evening review trains a faculty of attention that gradually extends itself forward into the lived day. We become more able to see ourselves as we act, not just in retrospect but in real time. This is the beginning of what the Stoics called conscious living. Another practical effect concerns our relationship with mistakes and failures. As we become accustomed to examining our errors each evening without harsh judgment, we develop a different attitude toward failure itself. We make a mistake during the day, and rather than spiraling into anxiety or defensiveness, we note it calmly. I will look at this tonight. The evening review becomes a trusted process for working with difficulty. This shift is significant. Much of our daily stress comes from carrying unexamined failures and conflicts through our hours. We made a mistake in the morning, and it haunts us all day. We had a difficult conversation, and we replay it endlessly. The evening review gives us a specific time and method for processing these experiences, which means we need not process them constantly. We can set something aside genuinely, knowing we will return to it properly later. This creates a kind of psychological space during the day. We are not suppressing or avoiding difficult moments, but we are also not ruminating on them endlessly. We are trusting in the practice that will help us understand them later. The practice also gradually shifts how we hold our principles and intentions. At first, we may approach the review primarily as judgment. Did I live up to my standards or not? But over time, the review becomes more like conversation. Our principles are not fixed commandments but living guides that we are learning to follow more skillfully. Each evening's examination helps us understand these principles more deeply and apply them more wisely. For example, we might hold patience as a principle. In the early days of practice, the evening review might reveal simply, I was impatient today. But as the practice matures, we begin to see more nuance. I was patient in the morning when rested, but lost patience in the afternoon when hungry and tired. This teaches us something practical about how to support our own virtue. We learn not just that we should be patient, but under what conditions we find patience difficult and what we need to sustain it. This kind of practical wisdom emerges naturally from sustained practice. We are not learning abstract philosophy. We are learning how virtue actually works in our specific life, with our specific temperament, in our specific circumstances. The evening review is where this contextualized wisdom develops. There are also practical challenges that arise with sustained practice. One common difficulty is maintaining consistency. In the beginning, we may be enthusiastic, reviewing our days diligently. Then the practice begins to feel routine, or we become busy, and we skip an evening. Then another. Before long, we have drifted from the practice entirely. This is normal. It is how humans engage with any discipline. The solution is not guilt but patient return. When we notice we have stopped doing the review, we simply begin again. That evening, without self-reproach, without elaborate recommitment. We just do it again. Over time, with many such returns, the practice establishes itself more firmly. It becomes part of the day's natural rhythm, something we miss when we skip it rather than something we must force ourselves to do. This establishment happens not through willpower alone, but through the practice proving its value. We experience its benefits and naturally want to maintain it. Another practical challenge is the occasional evening when we are too exhausted to review the day properly. We are barely conscious. Sleep is pressing upon us. Seneca would likely say, "Let it go. The practice serves life. Life does not serve the practice." If we genuinely need sleep more than we need review, we sleep. The review will be there tomorrow. However, we must distinguish between genuine exhaustion and mere resistance. Sometimes what feels like exhaustion is actually avoidance. Perhaps the day was difficult and we would rather not examine it. Here, a gentle persistence serves us. We might do a briefer review, but we do not avoid it entirely. We honor the practice even when it asks something of us. The practical integration of Seneca's evening review into contemporary life requires us to navigate certain specific challenges that differ from the ancient context. Seneca lived in a world without electric light, without screens, without the constant connectivity that characterizes modern existence. His evening was truly evening, a natural darkening that invited rest and reflection. We live differently. Our evenings are often bright, stimulating, filled with screens and information. The day does not end naturally. We must end it intentionally. This means the evening review requires a deliberate transition, a conscious stepping back from the stimulation of modern life into the quieter space where reflection becomes possible. Practically, this might mean turning off screens 30 minutes before the review, not as a rule imposed from outside, but as a choice that serves the practice. We recognize that we cannot review the day clearly if we are simultaneously consuming news or entertainment. The review asks for a quality of attention that requires settling, quieting, stepping back. This transition need not be elaborate. We might dim lights, sit quietly for a few moments, take a few conscious breaths. We are not performing a ritual in the mystical sense. We are simply helping ourselves shift from the day's outward focus to the review's inward attention. We are creating a threshold between activity and reflection. The specific practical challenge of our always connected age is that the day can feel endless. Messages arrive at all hours. Work bleeds into evening. The boundary between day and rest grows porous. For the evening review to function, we must establish that boundary ourselves. At some point, we say, the day is done. What happens after this moment belongs to tomorrow. This boundary is both practical and philosophical. Practically, it allows the review to occur. Philosophically, it embodies a Stoic principle. We do what we can within the time we have, then we release our grip. We cannot live every moment in action. We must also step back, review, rest, and prepare to begin again. Another contemporary challenge involves the sheer volume and complexity of modern days. Seneca's days were full, certainly, but they followed patterns that made them somewhat predictable. Our days can be fragmented, scattered across many contexts and modes of engagement. A morning video call with colleagues on another continent, an afternoon navigating city traffic, an evening coordinating family schedules. How do we review such complexity? The answer lies in focusing on what matters rather than attempting completeness. The review is not a comprehensive log. It is an examination of significant moments, of choices made, of opportunities to have acted better or recognition that we acted well. Most of the day's details can be released as insignificant. We focus on the moments that tested us, taught us, or revealed something important. As we develop skill with the practice, we become better at identifying these significant moments, both during the day and in the evening review. We learn what matters in our particular life. For one person, it might be how they spoke to their children. For another, how they responded to frustration at work. For another, whether they made time for the practices that sustain their well-being. The review naturally focuses on the areas where we are growing. The practical relationship between the evening review and sleep deserves attention as well. This is not a sleep technique, but it does prepare us for rest. By completing the day, by examining it and releasing it properly, we remove one of the major obstacles to natural sleep. The unquiet mind that continues processing, planning, worrying, regretting. When we lie down after the review, we lie down having genuinely finished the day. We have acknowledged our errors and our successes. We have learned what we could learn. We have, in Seneca's phrase, called the day to account. Now it can be released. Tomorrow will bring new opportunities to practice wisdom, but tonight we rest. This is perhaps the deepest practical value of the evening review. It transforms how we end our days. Instead of collapsing into sleep, exhausted and unresolved, or lying awake replaying difficulties, we complete the day consciously. We give it its due attention, then we let it go. This completion is its own kind of peace. The evening review, practiced consistently over time, becomes a cornerstone of the examined life. It is how we ensure that we are not merely living through our days but learning from them, that we are not merely reacting but developing wisdom. This simple practice, this nightly pause for honest reflection, gradually transforms how we live entirely. Not through dramatic breakthroughs, but through steady, accumulated learning. This is the practical power of Seneca's ancient discipline, available to anyone willing to examine their days with patience, honesty, and care. As we approach the close of this extended reflection on Seneca's evening practice, we find ourselves not at an ending but at a beginning of sorts. The nightly review, as we have explored it through these many passages, is not a practice we complete once and set aside. It is a practice we return to, night after night, season after season, each time with slightly more understanding, slightly more ease, and perhaps slightly more wisdom than the time before. The integration of this practice into our actual lives requires something that Stoic philosophy has always recognized as essential: patience with the process of becoming. Seneca himself reminds us that we are not born wise. We become wise through repeated, humble engagement with our own experience. The evening review is one of the primary instruments of this becoming. It is the daily workshop in which we refine our character, not through dramatic transformation, but through countless small adjustments and realizations. Consider how different this is from the way we often approach self-improvement in contemporary life. We seek dramatic breakthroughs, profound insights that change everything in a single moment. And while such moments can certainly occur, they are not the foundation of lasting change. The foundation is built through practices like the evening review, through the patient, consistent work of examining our days with honesty and compassion, learning what we can, and then releasing what we must. The philosopher Epictetus spoke often about the importance of daily training in virtue, comparing it to the training of an athlete or musician. You would not expect to run a marathon without daily practice, or to play a complex piece of music without regular rehearsal. Yet somehow we expect to develop wisdom, patience, courage, and self-mastery without similar dedication. The evening review is precisely this kind of dedicated practice. It is the daily training ground for the most important skills of human life: the ability to see ourselves clearly, to learn from our mistakes, to align our actions with our values, and to release what we cannot control. What makes this practice sustainable over the long term is its fundamental gentleness. This is worth returning to as we draw our exploration toward its close. The evening review, as Seneca practiced and taught it, is not an exercise in self-flagellation. It is not about maintaining a rigid standard of perfection that we inevitably fail to meet. It is about honest observation and compassionate growth. It is about being the wise friend to ourselves that we would be to someone we care about deeply. This distinction matters profoundly. A harsh, judgmental review may produce temporary changes in behavior, but it erodes the very self-trust and inner stability that the Stoics considered essential to the good life. A gentle, honest review builds that stability. It creates a relationship with ourselves characterized by trust, understanding, and genuine care. Over time, this relationship becomes one of the most valuable aspects of our lives. We come to know that no matter what happens during the day, we have this evening conversation to look forward to, this time of honest processing and release. The wisdom that accumulates through this daily practice is of a particular kind. It is not abstract or theoretical. It is embodied, practical wisdom, the kind the Greeks called phronesis, the practical wisdom of living well. This wisdom shows itself not in what we know intellectually, but in how we respond to situations as they arise. After months or years of evening review, we find that we catch ourselves more quickly when we begin to react unskillfully. We notice our patterns with less defensiveness. We adjust our course with less drama and more naturalness. This is what Seneca meant when he wrote about the sage as someone whose virtue had become so ingrained that it flowed naturally, without effort or conflict. The evening review is one of the paths toward this natural virtue. Through repeated observation and adjustment, what was once difficult and unnatural gradually becomes easier and more intuitive. The behaviors and responses that align with our values become more automatic, not because we are suppressing other impulses, but because we have genuinely learned and grown. Consider how this applies to one of the common challenges we explored earlier, responding to criticism with defensiveness. At first, the evening review helps us see after the fact that we reacted defensively, that there might have been a better way to respond. With continued practice, we begin to notice the defensiveness sooner, perhaps later that same day. Eventually, we might catch it in the moment, recognizing the defensive impulse as it arises and choosing a different response. And finally, after much practice, the defensive reaction simply becomes less common. We have learned, at a deep level, that criticism is information, not attack, that our worth is not diminished by others' observations, that we can remain open and curious even when challenged. This progression from after-the-fact recognition to in-the-moment awareness to genuinely transformed response is the essence of how the evening review builds wisdom. It works not through force or willpower, but through patient, repeated exposure to truth. We see ourselves clearly again and again, until that clarity becomes part of how we naturally perceive and respond to the world. The release aspect of the practice works in a similar cumulative way. At first, consciously releasing the day might feel artificial or incomplete. We say the words, we go through the mental gesture, but part of us still holds on to the day's events, replaying them, wishing they had gone differently. With continued practice, the release becomes more genuine. We learn, viscerally, that holding on serves no purpose, that the day is truly complete and cannot be changed. This understanding, repeated night after night, gradually transforms our relationship with past events in general. We become less likely to ruminate, not because we have forbidden ourselves from ruminating, but because we have learned that rumination does not serve us. We have practiced every single night the alternative, honest examination followed by genuine release. This alternative has become familiar, comfortable, effective. It is simply what we do with completed days. As this practice becomes more integrated into our lives, we may notice its influence extending beyond the evening hour. The very fact that we know we will review our day later can influence how we move through the day itself. not in a way that makes us self-conscious or performative, but in a way that keeps us slightly more aware, slightly more present. We know that we will be looking at this day later with honest, gentle attention, and this knowledge itself can help us make better choices in the moment. This is not about becoming perfect or never making mistakes. It is about developing what might be called a second attention, a part of awareness that observes even while we are acting. The Stoics spoke of this as the capacity to step back from our immediate reactions and see them with some perspective. The evening review trains this capacity by practicing it each night. Over time, this stepping back becomes more available to us during the day itself. We might find ourselves in a moment of frustration, about to speak sharply to someone, when we feel a slight pause, a moment of recognition. We see the impulse clearly. We remember other times we acted on similar impulses and reviewed those actions later with regret. And in that moment of clear seeing, we have a choice. Often, we will still make mistakes, but sometimes this moment of awareness is enough to change our course. The cumulative effect of these small moments of awareness and choice is substantial. Character, the Stoics understood, is built through repeated actions. The evening review influences those actions in two ways. Directly, by helping us learn from our mistakes and make better choices tomorrow, and indirectly, by cultivating the awareness that gives us more genuine choice in our moments of decision. There is something profoundly hopeful in this understanding. We are not fixed in our patterns. We are not condemned to repeat our mistakes endlessly. Through practices like the evening review, through patient attention and honest reflection, we can genuinely change. Not all at once, not perfectly, but really and meaningfully. The person we are tonight is not exactly the person we were a year ago, and the person we will be a year from now will not be exactly the person we are tonight. This is the promise of philosophy as the Stoics understood it, that we can cultivate wisdom, that we can grow in virtue, that we can become more fully who we wish to be. This growth is not separate from the evening review. It is the natural result of it. By examining our days with honesty and compassion, by learning what we can and releasing what we must, by gradually refining our understanding and our responses, we participate in the ancient philosophical project of caring for our soul. This phrase, care of the soul, appears throughout ancient philosophy. It points to the understanding that our inner life requires attention, cultivation, and practice, just as a garden requires tending or a skill requires training. The evening review is one of the most accessible and sustainable forms of this care. It requires no special equipment, no particular setting, no teacher or guide beyond the wisdom of philosophers like Seneca. It requires only time, honesty, and the commitment to return to the practice night after night. This simplicity is part of its power. We can practice it anywhere, under any circumstances. A traveler in an unfamiliar city, a person going through crisis, someone celebrating success, or someone navigating loss can all practice the evening review. The external circumstances change. The practice remains available. This reliability is itself a source of stability. In a life that often feels unpredictable and beyond our control, we have this one thing that we can control completely. Whether we take time each evening to examine our day with honesty and care. No one can take this practice from us. No external circumstance can prevent us from engaging in it. It belongs to us entirely, and it offers us a way to maintain our center even when everything around us is changing. The Stoics called this inner stability the inner citadel, the fortress of the soul that remains unshaken by external events. The evening review is one of the ways we build and maintain this citadel. Each night of honest self-examination, each moment of learning and release, adds another stone to the foundation of our inner stability. Over time, we become less reactive to external circumstances, not because we stop caring, but because we have developed a stable center that is not dependent on things going a particular way. This is quite different from detachment or indifference. The Stoic sage cares deeply about virtue, about living well, about acting in accordance with reason and nature. But this caring is not dependent on external outcomes. We can be fully engaged with life, fully present to our relationships and responsibilities, while also maintaining an inner freedom that does not rise and fall with circumstances. The evening review supports this engaged detachment by helping us distinguish clearly between what we controlled in our day and what we did not. We review our choices, our responses, our intentions with full attention. These are what we controlled. These are what matter for our character and our growth. The outcomes of our actions, how others responded, what happened as a result, these we note with interest but not with the same weight of responsibility. This nightly practice of distinguishing what was ours and what was not gradually trains us to make this distinction more naturally throughout our days. As we have explored throughout this long reflection, there is nothing exotic or mysterious about the evening review. It is simply the practice of honest attention to our own experience, guided by the values we hold, tempered by compassion for our own humanity, and completed by the release of what is finished. Yet this simple practice, repeated consistently, has the power to gradually transform our lives. Not through drama or revolution, but through the patient accumulation of small insights, small improvements, small moments of genuine learning and growth. And so we arrive not at a conclusion but at a natural resting point in our exploration. The evening review continues, as it has continued for those who have practiced it across centuries. Tonight, tomorrow night, the night after, the opportunity for this practice is always present, always available to us. We need only claim it, returning to it with the same gentle persistence that we bring to any practice we value. Perhaps the most important thing to carry forward from this reflection is the understanding that the evening review is fundamentally an act of care. We care for ourselves by paying attention, by being honest, by learning what we can. We care for our character, our growth, our movement toward wisdom. This caring is not self-indulgent. It is the foundation of being able to care well for others and to engage well with the world. We cannot give what we do not have. By tending to our own inner life with patience and skill, we become more capable of contributing meaningfully to the lives around us. The Stoics understood philosophy not as abstract theory but as a way of life, a set of practices and commitments that shape how we move through the world. The evening review is one of these practices, perhaps one of the most essential. It connects us directly to the long lineage of those who have sought to live with greater wisdom, greater virtue, greater alignment between their values and their actions. When we sit down each evening to review our day, we join in a conversation that has been ongoing for thousands of years, a conversation about what it means to live well, to grow in understanding, to become more fully human. This conversation does not end. It continues in each of us as we take up these practices and make them our own. The specific details will vary. Each person's evening review will be shaped by their own circumstances, their own challenges, their own values and aspirations. But the fundamental structure remains the same: honest examination, compassionate learning, genuine release. These elements, practiced together consistently, create the conditions for real growth and lasting change. As this extended reflection draws to a close, perhaps what remains is simply to begin, or to begin again. To set aside time this evening for the practice we have explored. To approach it not as one more obligation but as a gift we give ourselves. a few quiet minutes for honest reflection and release. To notice what we notice without harsh judgment. To learn what we can. To release the day with genuine acceptance that it is complete. And then to rest, knowing that we have done what we can do, that tomorrow will bring its own opportunities for practice and growth, and that this gentle rhythm of living, examining, learning, and releasing is itself a form of wisdom. The evening settles, the day completes itself, and in the quiet space of reflection, we find both honesty and peace, both clarity and compassion. This is the gift of Seneca's practice, offered across the centuries to all who would receive it. May it serve you well in your own journey toward wisdom and peace.